Men misunderstand Machiavelli when they read him as a crude teacher of manipulation. He was not instructing men how to indulge desire more cleverly. He was warning them that unchecked desire is the fastest way to surrender power without realizing it has left your hands. Nowhere is this more evident than in the aging man who believes youth can be borrowed through proximity, that vitality can be reclaimed by touching it, that time can be negotiated if the woman beside him is young enough. This belief is not romantic, it is delusional. When a man past 40 turns his attention toward a much younger woman, he rarely frames the decision honestly. He calls it chemistry, he calls it preference, he calls it natural attraction. Machiavelli would call it a strategic error rooted in vanity. The moment a man begins acting to feel young, rather than to remain sovereign, he has already inverted the hierarchy between impulse and command. Power, as Machiavelli understood it, is not brute dominance. It is continuity of will across time. Power is the capacity to move toward long objectives without being seduced by short rewards. Youth offers stimulation, it does not offer alignment. And alignment, not stimulation, is what preserves a man's trajectory when years compress his margin for error. A younger woman does not meet an older man as an equal temporal creature. She lives in expansion, he lives in consolidation. Her attention drifts forward into possibility. His must narrow into legacy. These orientations are not compatible without cost. When these orientations collide, the older man does not pull her upward into wisdom. He is slowly pulled sideways into irrelevance, not because she intends harm, but because desire does not negotiate with destiny. It only distracts from it. Machiavelli observed that men fall not when enemies overpower them, but when pleasures disarm them. A young woman becomes a mirror in which an older man admires the reflection rather than guarding the fortress that made him formidable. He adjusts his behavior subtly at first. He spends more time maintaining appeal than strengthening position. He becomes cautious about displeasing her, not because she demands it, but because he fears losing the illusion she provides. This is the beginning of dependence, and dependence is incompatible with authority. The tragedy is that the man believes he is winning. Society reinforces the delusion. Other men envy him. Younger men imagine they are witnessing success. But Machiavelli never measured success by appearance. He measured it by leverage. Ask a harsher question: who adapts more? Who yields ground more often? Who rearranges priorities that once felt immovable? Power always leaves footprints before it fully departs. A man over 40 carries accumulated structure, habits hardened by consequence, standards forged through failure. When he binds himself to someone still forming these structures, instability is introduced. Youth requires exploration. Masculine maturity requires elimination. What does not serve must be cut away, not entertained for novelty. An older man cannot afford experimentation disguised as romance. There is also the unspoken cost of time. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. Time is not neutral. It is either harvested or squandered. The older man who pours energy into excitement drains it from permanence. Conversations orbit emotion rather than direction. Decisions become reactive rather than strategic. The future begins revolving around maintaining connection instead of expanding influence. This is how decline begins without crisis. There is something even more dangerous at work. A younger woman does not need an older man to rise. She uses the relationship as passage, not destination. Even when affection is sincere, her growth pulls her forward while his stability anchors him. Over time, he becomes the environment she passes through, not the partner she builds with. This asymmetry is not immoral. It is biological and psychological. Machiavelli would never condemn nature. He would condemn the man who ignores it. The older man assumes experience gives him control. In reality, experience only grants advantage when paired with restraint. Without restraint, experience becomes arrogance, and arrogance blinds a man to how desire negotiates from need. The one who needs less governs more. When a man dates far younger, he needs validation that he is still chosen, still wanted, still alive. That need seeps into his posture, his tolerance, and his decisions. He begins excusing behaviors he would never have accepted in his prime, not because his standards evolved, but because his leverage eroded. Machiavelli warned rulers never to be loved at the cost of being respected. Romantic relationships follow the same law. Respect emerges from gravity, from rootedness, from inevitability. Youth chases feeling. Authority commands presence. These currencies cannot be exchanged without loss. This is not a moral argument, it is structural. Men are not destroyed by younger women. They are undone by abandoning long-term command for short-term sensation. The woman is merely the catalyst. The collapse is rarely immediate. It unfolds gradually, disguised as happiness, masked as renewal, praised as success. Only later does the man realize that while proving he could still attract, he stopped protecting what he built. Machiavelli understood that power is most vulnerable when it believes it has earned rest. The older man often turns toward youth from fatigue, not hunger. This is precisely when fortune prepares reversal. Youth does not challenge authority directly. It dissolves it slowly by shifting a man's center of gravity. His thoughts drift from creation toward maintenance. Discipline loosens under the pretext of enjoyment. He becomes less ruthless with time, less severe with standards, more tolerant of distractions that once offended his sense of order. Self-sabotage appears dressed as romance, and the man applauds himself for it. The most dangerous illusion is that he believes he remains the teacher. Teaching requires detachment, and desire makes detachment impossible. The moment attraction enters, leverage is surrendered. Machiavelli warned princes against mercenaries because they fight for reward, not loyalty. Youth functions the same way. It aligns with novelty and growth, not permanence or sacrifice. When excitement fades, alignment evaporates without malice. The older man calls it betrayal. Machiavelli would call it predictability. You cannot anchor permanence to something designed for motion. The man miscalculates scarcity. He believes youth is rare and valuable. He forgets that youth is abundant and fleeting, while alignment is rare and durable. By chasing what fades, he sacrifices what compounds. His life becomes a sequence of intense moments rather than a coherent arc. Even success cannot protect him. Wealth attracts youth, but wealth without boundaries invites extraction. Attention becomes transactional. Validation becomes conditional. The man senses this shift, but suppresses the awareness. Confronting it would require relinquishing the fantasy that he is still operating from choice rather than concession. Machiavelli taught that power is lost through tolerated compromises. A missed boundary here, a softened value there. An overlooked disrespect justified by attraction. Over time, the man no longer recognizes himself. He still commands resources, but not direction. He occupies space, but not the center. The cruelest consequence is that his peers do not correct him. They applaud him, they envy him. No one tells him his energy is being spent maintaining relevance instead of consolidating legacy. Machiavelli called this the danger of flattery. Youth makes a man feel chosen again. But feeling chosen is not the same as being positioned. A man past 40 cannot afford to confuse desire with destiny. One flatters the ego, the other demands sacrifice. This is why Machiavelli emphasized foresight over pleasure. The wise man asks not how a decision feels today, but where it places him several moves ahead. Dating much younger traps a man in perpetual reaction. He responds to emotional shifts he cannot control. Control is not tyranny, it is stability, and stability is the foundation of masculine authority. Without it, attraction becomes chaos disguised as connection. Attraction cannot be stored or secured by effort. It fades as naturally as it arrives. What remains is the structure of the life the man either protected or abandoned while chasing it. Machiavelli would ask not whether a man can attract youth, but why he needs to. The answer is rarely sexual alone, it is existential. A younger woman represents untouched time. When a man past 40 binds himself to that symbol, he negotiates with mortality instead of confronting it. He is not choosing her as she is, but what she represents. This is where damage becomes internal. Aging demands recalibration. Strength must turn into precision. Ambition must refine into mastery. The man who distracts himself with youth delays this evolution and remains psychologically suspended. Machiavelli warned that men fall not because the world changes, but because they refuse to adapt with it. Dating younger appears modern and rebellious. In reality, it is avoidance. The man avoids confronting limits by surrounding himself with possibility that is not his own. His gravitas erodes. Authority comes from coherence, not control. Youth introduces misalignment into his inner tempo. His rhythm slows while hers accelerates. Conversations become negotiations rather than constructions. He explains himself more. He compromises clarity to preserve connection. Presence fragments. Machiavelli observed that men lose respect first in their own eyes. Once that happens, the world reflects it back. The man senses when he is no longer a force but a resource.